Hey, so today was the first actual day of court. So it's Thursday today, and then court will also be starting next Monday. So it was like this, and then we really get started, which is pretty exciting. I came home and like made dinner, and I had to go grocery shopping, so like it's not like fresh in my mind like it has been in every other video. But so today they did their opening statements. I feel like it's almost like a stereotype where you have the like old, quiet, soft-spoken, very calm defense attorney with the like oversized jacket and like old style, and then you have the young, sharp prosecutors in their like really nice suits, and we have that. There's like the two prosecutors are like young dudes, and I think, oh, suddenly it's Pi's vlog. You saying hello? You just need to headbutt me for a little bit, huh, until you're happy. Okay, I'll keep talking though. One of them, I think it might be his first time, just because he seemed a little more flustered when he was cross-examining the witness. There was a witness today. I don't know, like the whole thing has been very exciting. So we got there 8:30 as we were supposed. Well, it was actually 8:45. It turned out. I didn't remember exactly what time we were supposed to be there, but I got there at 8:30. It was 8:45. 9:45 is when they actually brought us back. Everything is like so on court time. It's ridiculous. It'll be like, oh, show up to this thing this time sharp, and like 2 hours later they're like, oh yeah, I think we're about ready for you. You're just like, wow. The whole reason we stayed late today is because court moves very slow. I don't even know. We went back in, they did their opening statements, and they really went over that this is going to be a case regarding whether or not this person is competent to stand trial, which they defined many times over for us, and like what the difference between that and like mentally sound is, because the defense is arguing that because he has both schizophrenia, which then was very, I mean, this is the case for me. I was obsessed with trying to learn about schizophrenia for such a long time in high school, and I don't know, it's one of those where I've just been always, oh, bye, stop. Oh my gosh, sometimes he's just very, very needy, and this is apparently that moment. But anyway, so I was just obsessed with like learning the nuance of it, because it's such an odd and interesting disorder. So defining that, and then him talking to what was her profession? Her profession was like something very specific, but basically she was like the psychologist who had talked to him multiple times. But so she had originally diagnosed him with schizophrenia, as well as and all of the terms, they went by them so quickly because they all like had it in front of them, and I was like, these are long words, give me a moment to write them, because we had to write our own notes. Dang, it wasn't, I don't think the word was neurological, but that he had some kind of cognitive disorder, and that was related to that like schizophrenia was then kind of part of that. She had diagnosed him with that back in 2016 when he originally was in court for assault, and they determined, I guess, that he needed some help and he was on some medications. And I guess one of the things she pointed out that I felt like I really needed to like pay attention to was, she said that someone who is schizophrenic, if they go off of their medication, that could then cause a lot of issues. That could be very bad. Nobody has said this person went off of their medication. Actually, the defense, I'm gonna be jumping around. The defense in their opening statement like really described what. As I was editing this, I decided I'm not going to go into specific details about the case. I'm going to talk about my impressions of the process and the days, and vaguely about what the case was about, but I won't be going into specific detail about what happened, and I won't name the defendant or anything like that. Just a heads up in case you were looking for those things, I won't actually be saying them here. He is being convicted of, so that we would understand. And they said that we are going to see a picture, but I guess he has a history of like violence, of just attacking people. But it's so interesting because I have to keep reminding myself, like, we're not here to judge. Like, obviously it sounds like he did do it and he should stand trial, but it's whether or not he is cognitively capable of it and capable of helping his lawyer, and them discussing the defense talking to the witness, discussing the schizophrenia, and that he probably has a lower capacity, that he may have like a developmental disorder, but that she thought that based on various things. It's like, okay, maybe. But then also, like, with the history of things going on, like, obviously this is someone who isn't going to get better. And she said that is basically, he's not going to get any better. He's not, like, he's at his baseline is what they called it. He's not going to improve. Whether or not that's still a level at which he can stand trial for the crime of murdering his mother. I mean, I don't feel like the defense has yet. I mean, this is the first witness, and this is going to be a long trial, so I have to listen to everything. But it is kind of like, they didn't put up a good enough defense yet with just the first witness, but also the prosecution. He didn't seem to know what a lot of things were. And I know this was like the defense's witness, so they've already gone over everything. But he seemed to stumble over some things, and like she had to correct him on many things that he just simply said incorrectly. And he didn't seem to be like bringing up strong arguments. I mean, the one thing he brought up is they went through like play by play her interview with him for this trial, basically. That this court case, that like his "Are you okay to stand trial" interview. They went case by case, and it seemed at that time and then what she said was that he understands and can parrot back the information he has been taught, because they rigorously teach them about the court system, I guess, at this mental health facility. So she said that he understands it, but that he has not shown any ability to act upon it. Like, that he understands that he should tell his lawyer if, like, someone's lying, was their example, but that he has not shown any ability to actually do that at the time it was necessary. Like, that, and that he doesn't necessarily understand the severity of his crime. Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's just so interesting, too, because she was describing, like, some things that would mark you as schizophrenic, and just things like, you know, like trailing off and their sentences like blinking out, like things like that, where I was like, I could, if I was already being put into a mental health facility, I could feasibly get diagnosed with something like this. And this is something that, like, I happen to have had a lot of interest in mental health, and I happen to have taken several psychology classes. I didn't minor in psychology, I didn't major in psychology, nothing, but I took more than one psychology class in high school and college, and did just a lot of research and looking into a lot of different things, specifically with schizophrenia, just for my own interest. It is one of the things that they went over, I think, both in that and then also in a journalism class. And then we were talking about the fact that you can, using very specific, because there are specific terms that they look for, and they've done experiments sending psychology students, which, like, does not sound like a good thing, into mental health facilities and have them just answer questions normally, but throw in very specific keywords. And some of them have been then locked away and had a very difficult time getting back out of mental health facilities because those keywords flag. And there's a couple things like that. And there are also things that then, you know, it's like, it's good enough, even though you're not necessarily, like, obviously he was in for assault and found to having issues that getting off his meds could cause issues, and then ended up killing his mother. So, like, there's a lot of problems that I'm already aware of within mental health diagnoses, and they're trying to get better every day. And what really interesting is they said between his first time, which was in 2016, and this time, they're on a new version of the I don't remember what it's called, but the book of mental health diagnoses. So she said that one of the things was one person at one point diagnosed him with something, and she, I believe, diagnosed him with the same thing, but it is now worded differently, I believe is what it was. And so she explained that like this thing that he was diagnosed with before is exactly the same thing, they just call it something different now, which seems to happen quite a bit. And also the system of the mental health facility he went to changed dramatically between the two. And they talked about that, and it's like, I don't know how much that's going to play in so far, but it is interesting. I also have to say, I really like court. It's like such a break from work. Like, you just sit around, and the benches are horrible. My back is killing me. I have to sit on a hard bench because we have to socially distance. We can't all be on the nice, comfy juror chairs. So I'm in the back on a hard bench. Also, there are 14 of us, and only 12 of us are jurors, and they said at the end of the trial they will tell us which of us are actually alternates and can go home. And I have the last number. I'm number 14 of 14, so I have a feeling I might not even get to deliberate, which would be such a disappointment to go through the whole trial and then like not even get to deliberate. I'm a little bit sad about it, but my odds are better because there's one guy whose wife is having a baby and might get to go home early, and so he might just be an alternate, and so it might only be one person, but I hope it's not me. I want to deliberate. I want to do the whole thing. But yeah, so it's a little bit like school, and you just like, you listen to the lecture and you take your notes, and I was taking all kinds of notes and I was learning things, and yeah, so at least at this stage it is very much like being back in school, and you get an hour and a half for lunch. Didn't get scratched by anyone, didn't get, you know, kicked by any dogs. Like, it was just so chill. I didn't have to like exert much energy. I actually made the mistake of, after lunch I decided I was going to walk up the 4 flights of stairs. Well, I am out of shape, so then I sat there trying not to look like I was huffing and panting in my mask. I'm gonna do that every day. I think I'm gonna do it at least once a day. I might not do it all the time, but at least once a day I'm gonna walk up and down the staircase, because it is 4 flights of stairs, and I'm gonna be going up at least twice in the morning and at lunchtime, and then down again. So at least once a day I'm gonna use the stairs instead of the elevator, just to kind of, you know, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get myself back in shape. But it's just so nice. It's like I don't have to be on top of everything for 9 straight hours with a half-hour lunch break. I don't have to like know where everything is and what's going on, and continuously keep up the persona of, you know, the receptionist persona, which is kind of like a shield. You know, if you've ever been in customer service, you can put up a front and have it as a shield where you're just like extra nice, extra attentive, extra aware, and people love it. And it gets you pretty far if you're in that kind of field. If you've ever been a receptionist, or you've ever been in customer service, customers really respond well to you being extra happy, nice, and on their side about things. And so I wear that as a shield, and I don't have to do that. I can just chill, and it's just silence most of the time. We just sit and we just listen and we just wait. I don't know, I just feel, other than my back killing me because of those hard wooden pews, the rest of it is just so nice. I really like it. That's my update, and there won't be another update on this until Monday, and then we're going straight through for at least 2 weeks, and then after the 15th the deliberation starts, and I hope I'm on that. But okay, that's all for now. Okay, so Charlie number 2. First they brought on a detective. We started like an hour late again, but it was only an hour late. It's getting better. So they brought on a detective who did like the initial interview after the incident, and then they sort of barely introduced him, and then they were going to show us one video which was like the officers first encountering him after. The detective who did the interview was actually at the house because they thought maybe it was a hostage situation. I guess he'd been called in for that, in case, because he's a hostage negotiator, I guess. It turned out he was not at the house and they found him elsewhere. So the guy was like there securing the scene and then met them at the station. So almost all of today was watching the video about the interview, which turned out was a 6-hour video. Like, holy crap. But a lot of it's him sitting in silence, and they like had us watch an awful lot of that. The guy in the room by himself just waiting. And it was really interesting, like hearing the investigation, and as they're getting information, because at the first part, like they knew that the mom was hurt and it wasn't good. And what was really interesting is the parts that he was like dead sure of, like there was a lot of parts that either he was hiding it or he didn't remember or something, but the parts that he was dead sure of is that the reason he strangled her is that she said she was going to give him something he really wanted, and then she got a really scary face. Especially like the investigators in the case seemed to think that like by the point that that was at, that's a little weird. And then he also like clearly remembered after, he remembered her getting up and then going to follow him and then leaving, and they were like, it is actually impossible. So like there's no way she got up. But I mean, they talked about schizophrenia, like the idea that perhaps at some point he had started seeing things that weren't happening in there. Maybe from the start he was seeing things that weren't happening. Maybe as she was defending herself, suddenly a new image took over and he was having some kind of a hallucination. Like, it is possible. Like the way he was describing, almost like he was seeing like a demonic side of her that's like, clearly there was no way, but I wonder. But the whole thing is, I keep reminding myself, like, this isn't actually that relevant. to what we're deciding, because whether or not he was having a psychotic break, which I feel like they have a strong case for that so far, whether or not he had a psychotic break that caused this to happen, either way, all we're trying to determine is his competency now. And so watching the interview and watching like his competency then, the two things he was always like quite aware of and quite sure of was his needs. Like when he needed to go to the bathroom, he remembered he needed to go to the bathroom and he wanted a glass of water, and he was clear on that. When he was tired, he wanted to lay down. That was then his focus from then on out. Like he was just tired. He wanted to lay down. He kept trying to get comfy in the chair. Finally, he ended up like lying on the ground during one of these like 2-hour windows where he's sitting by himself. And so that was very interesting. Also interesting was that they had like the good cop, bad cop guys going on. And the good cop guy was the one who'd like been the witness that we didn't really see it all today because it was mostly the video. He kind of like, he was getting more and more like frustrated sounding, like as he was learning that this kid had murdered his mother. That wasn't his information going in. He was trying to get information, and then it was clear that things were being withheld. But the other guy was like bad cop, and finally he got into like almost like a yelling match with the kid, and he was like, that was the first time he had really showed emotion, was to the raised voice. So they had the good cop guy leave, and then he and the other guy really kind of like raised voices going back and forth, and that was the first time that he kind of had a clear outline of his day, like waking up and then hear the steps up until that point, and then he didn't want to talk to the officer anymore. But it was still like, it was interesting because he was also saying like constantly there's all kinds of like domestic violence problems, like that his mom would hit him, his mom would be disrespecting him, and they kept using that term, disrespecting him. I was just like, I mean, it could be, hey, do you mind? That's what I thought. Don't scratch the furniture, bud. Oh, Zeus missed me. You missed me all day. No, miss me to my face. Miss me to my face. It was interesting though. They also, like, he'd started off really trying to appeal to him emotionally, like, and at some point he said that the brother mentioned that he has medication for schizophrenia, and he kind of was like, no, I think my medication is for stress, and he wouldn't acknowledge that he was on that, but I guess the brother had told them, and so he kind of switched tact and, you know, trying to lay out the facts and like, oh no, where were you, and kind of being gentle, and then having to switch back over. But yeah, the like yelling, it was interesting because like maybe he did grow up in an abusive household, maybe his mom was hitting him all the time, or maybe he just kind of has some kind of weird ego complex. Like they didn't mention any kind of other she had said like neurodevelopmental disorder or schizophrenia, but like definitely there was like a disconnect, because by the time they told him like, yeah, your mom is confirmed dead, he just didn't really have a reaction. He didn't seem to understand what they were saying for a while, and he didn't seem to believe them. It was kind of one of those where it was like, oh, he could just be used to like cops saying lies. Cops will say all kinds of things to try and get you to confess. Like that was, I mean, they were clearly changing tactics throughout. Like you could just tell they're just trying to get something out of him, which, like, yeah, he could totally be one of those who's just like, yeah, I know that they're trying to say that. My mom's probably fine. But he also just, like, didn't seem to, like, that didn't connect any circuits for him. That the fact that they're like, no, you hurt your mom. He's like, yeah, but, like, we always fight. So he either didn't believe them or just, like, it could not connect. He kept also asking, like, when am I gonna get to go? Like, do you guys have any beds? I'm really tired. And the guy was like, yeah, you probably had an adrenaline rush. It would be unusual for you to be tired. Yeah, it was interesting. They had talked about, like delayed pauses and things, but really the thing that I thought was the most kind of probably helpful in their case of him not being competent enough was really just that he did not seem to connect any kind of emotion to his mom being dead. And like people can just like blank out, but it was just like nothing. It was the same as any other question. Everything was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, or like one word answers, and they're just like, your mom's dead. He's just like, oh, I don't know. You're like, no, really, you killed your mother. You're being charged with murder. You're not going home. And he's like, okay, well then, yeah, when am I going to jail? Like, when am I going to the next step? Like, how long am I going to be here for? And none of it just seemed to, like, if he just didn't believe them, that's one thing. But if, at the same time, if it wasn't that he didn't believe them, if it was that it just, the idea of her being dead just wasn't going through. Like, maybe that is a competency thing. Like, it's really interesting. Whether or not he was competent then, when the psychiatrist, I believe she was, the doctor had said if he had been off of his meds, a psychotic break would be very likely, and this could have been a psychotic break. He said he took two medications every night, or 2 pills every night, that the brother said was for his schizophrenia and he said was for stress. But even though he maintained he took them, like, maybe he didn't, or maybe he wasn't taking them correctly. And I mean, he could have just not taken them then, but then if he has been on them and he is not having psychotic episodes, then reasonably one should think if he is on his medication that he would then be competent enough to stand trial. So it's a little tricky still. I mean, obviously we don't have all the information, I have to wait till the end, but it is kind of like, I know you're not supposed to start like connecting anything or like making any assumptions or anything like that until you get to the end, but you do start trying to be like, okay, like here are the pieces coming together. And at the same time it's like, well, we don't really have a lot of pieces. But that interview was really interesting. We have to still finish watching it because they just had us watching all these long boring dead spots where he wasn't doing much, and they're like, oh, should we speed it up a little? And like, oh, maybe not. They gave us the whole transcript too, like this thick. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's been really interesting still. Also, I have to say, it kind of highlights how poorly you're treated in your own work environment when, like, you're in this court system where you're really not doing much. You're just sitting there listening. And, like, yeah, I'm sitting on a hard pew. It is not comfortable. I appreciate the stretch breaks. But they're, like, so adamant that we get our 15-minute break in the morning, our hour-and-a-half lunch, and our 15 in the afternoon. Like, they're so dead set on that, even when our morning starts like 2 hours late, so a 15-minute break is only like a half hour after we get there. They're still so conscious of it, and I don't know, like, it really, you kind of notice how poorly you're treated in your own work environment when you get treated a little bit more like a human being who has needs when you're doing something like this. So just some food for thought. That's all I really have to say for today. I just feel tired. I just haven't felt mentally well in a little bit. And I think this has been a nice break from work, but then, like, because it's a break from work, I feel like things are getting fixed with work. It's just getting busier and busier, and there's some other stuff. I won't go into that in this because this is unrelated. And to start thinking about things like that when you've got some time for your brain to be doing some stuff because you have a lot of downtime all of a sudden. I will talk to you after tomorrow as well. Bye!